Hello, this is Tracy from stepbysteppainting.net, and I'm going to show you how to paint the Silhouette Hot Air Balloon Sunset painting. You will need an 11-inch by 14-inch canvas, a 3/4 inch flat wash brush, the colors titanium white and cerulean blue. We're going to do the sky first, and I always dip my brush in the water first and let it pat dry. So the brush is wet, but it's not dripping wet. I'm going to grab the cerulean blue, and my sky is going to be darkest at the top. So I'm going to just use the pure form of cerulean blue at the top and go down about 2 inches. Doesn't have to be exact. And I'm doing all horizontal strokes, nice and even. I don't see any short brush marks or anything. I'm applying the paint all the way across. And then I'm going to grab my titanium white and kind of drag it out on my palette to mix the two colors together to make a light blue. And I'm going to apply that to the canvas. So the goal here is to create kind of an ombre effect with the darker blue, and it's getting lighter with the white. So I'm going to gradually add more white to make the sky lighter as I go down. And then, of course, we're going to be adding the sunset colors as well. And then you noticed how when I add the colors as I go down, I like to blend it back up into the sky to kind of get the blue and the white to have a nice smooth transition. Next, I loaded my palette with the medium magenta, and I did not rinse my brush. I'm going to drag whatever blue and white is left on the brush, grab the medium magenta, and kind of mix it together over here in the palette. It's going to create kind of a purple color. And then I want to blend it the same way I did with the white. So I want this light blue to turn into the magenta, and I'm doing that by letting the colors blend together on the canvas. So the area where that white and magenta meet, I'm just kind of lightly going over it. It's wet on wet blending. It should be blending nicely together when you paint over wet on wet. And then it's going to gradually turn into a pure form of the medium magenta. So far we have the cerulean blue that turned to light blue, and then it turned to kind of a purplish color, and then it's going to turn to that magenta, pure form of magenta. And then I'm going to add some more magenta to my palette. See, it's okay if, since I didn't rinse my brush off, there's still some blue hanging around, and if you get a little streak of blue in there, you just kind of blend it in. It's nature. It's not going to be a perfect fade from each color. It's not a computer graphic. We're painting a sunset, so there might be a pink streak in the blue area or a blue streak in the pink area, and that's okay. Notice how I'm painting the sides. You can decide to paint the sides when you're done. Sometimes I go both ways. I wait till I'm done, or I just paint them as I go along if I have leftover paint on my brush. Next color is going to be cadmium red light, And we're gonna do the same thing, but this time I'm gonna rinse my brush because I want to get all that blue off of my brush. Blue and this is kind of an orange color. The blue and orange don't rinse very well, so I want to make sure I get that brush completely clean. And then of course I did load my palette with more of the medium magenta, because what we're going to do is we're going to do double load medium magenta and the cadmium red light. So I'm going to grab both of those colors, and so this cadmium red light is a very orange color. You can look at it and say that's orange. So the magenta and orange blend nicely together. They're both warm colors. We've got a nice smooth blend transition, but the tricky thing is that some of that purple in there didn't blend so well with that orange color, so I got kind of a muddy look. And later on I'll go and fix that. It bothered me. It may not bother you, so you'll kind of see what's happening here. So what I'm doing is, again, the medium magenta and that orange color, both double loaded, and then eventually I want the pure form of that cadmium red light. So you can see how it transitions from that purple to the orange. You get a little bit muddy right there because purple and orange kind of make a brown color. Again, if that doesn't bother you, then don't worry about it. So I'm basically just going over some of these areas right here to blend the colors together. And now we have more of a pure form of the cadmium red light. And I'm almost all the way down my canvas right now. Definitely more than halfway at this point. And next I'm going to switch yellow. So cadmium yellow medium is the next color I'm using. And I'm going to not rinse my brush, because the colors that are already on my brush are going to blend nicely with this yellow, so I don't have to worry about rinsing right now. And I'm going to let this yellow kind of blend with the orange to make kind of a lighter orange color, and then it's going to turn into a more pure form of yellow as the orange on my brush is fading out. So I'm not loading my brush with any more of the orange. I'm just going to grab yellow. And then our main goal is to get this sunset to be very bright on the bottom. And the way to do that is to use the titanium white. So I'm going to load my palette with just the titanium white and the cadmium yellow medium. I'm going to rinse my brush completely to get all that orange off the brush, because I want a very light area down here. This is where the sun is. It's the brightest part of the painting. And I'm going to grab both the colors, titanium white and cadmium yellow medium. And I'm going to do that same blending thing, the wet on wet blending, painting over the colors that are already there, letting them mix themselves on the canvas. Keeping my strokes consistent. I'm doing the long horizontal strokes so you don't see any short strokes in there. It's very consistent. It goes from one end of the canvas all the way to the next end. And then I'm just going to kind of lightly brush up with this light yellow. Then it helps to blend the colors above. So as I go down, I'm going to start adding more white than the yellow to get that brighter color. Still grabbing a little bit of yellow, but definitely a lot of white and a little bit of yellow. Occasionally, you may find that your brush has gotten super dry, especially at this point. We're all the way down the canvas and I haven't dipped my brush in the water in a while. You can grab a little bit of water, but just make sure it's not dripping wet. It's not watercolors. You can kind of tap the brush on the side, squeeze the water out. It kind of gets the brush moist, but not too wet. So that's what I did when I dipped my brush in the water. And keep going down. Make sure that bottom area is the brightest. I'm all the way down to the bottom edge of the canvas. So you don't need to worry about leaving any space on the bottom. We're going to do the silhouette over that bright area. And then I'm kind of lightly blending over where the colors are meeting. Okay. I talked about that kind of muddy area where that purple and orange mesh together, and I'm gonna do a little tweaking here to kind of fix that. Again, if it doesn't bother you, you can move on, but I'm gonna do some white and magenta. For some reason, titanium white always helps with this. So I kind of blended to match that color right there, and I'm using the white to kind of disguise that muddy area right there. And of course, I'm going to blend it in with the rest of the area. So it's a magenta and a white to disguise that kind of orange and purple muddy area, and blending it back up into the colors that are surrounding it. Again, totally optional. And then I loaded my palette back with the CERULEAN blue. I'm going to do CERULEAN blue and white to kind of blend this little area right there to match that color, just to get that pink and blue to blend. Those the light blue area kind of looks like high clouds, but like I said, it's a sunset. It's not a perfect transition from each color. It's nature, and it's not supposed to look like a perfect computer graphics, so remember that. Next, we're gonna grab a foam pouncer and stamp the sun. I believe this is the second largest. It's either the largest one or the second largest from the pack. And titanium white. This is the Martha Stewart pouncers that I ordered from Amazon, and I'm gonna use the titanium white on a notebook paper because I need a lot of space for this, and I really want that sponge to be completely covered in the white. So we're going to press firmly and twist. And you notice that I did the sun 2 fingers up onto the canvas. There's my sun. Super easy, super effective. You made a perfect sun. Next, you're going to need Mars Black and 3 brush sizes. So we're going to do the silhouettes next. And we're going to use a number 4 bright. This is going to be used for the hot air balloons. A number 5 round, so like a medium size round brush. We're going to do that for the land on the bottom and parts of the trees. And a very small brush. This is a 10-0 liner brush. This is going to be used for details in the trees, those birds, some of the details in the balloons. So we're going to paint the land with that round brush, that number 5 round brush. If you don't have a number 5, it can be like a medium size round. If it says 6 or 4 on it, it is okay. So I dipped my brush in the water, pat dry, grabbed the Mars Black, and I'm going to do this land. So about 3 fingers high on the left. The hill or the land was supposed to be higher on the left and the right. It dips underneath the sun and it goes up high again. And I'm kind of sketching this land just to kind of gain a little bit more confidence in how I want this silhouette to look. And doing the sketching sort of thing kind of helps with that. And then I'm going to fill it in solid black. And then, of course, if you wanted to grab a larger brush to fill in the area, then you may do so. But I'm using the same round brush I used to sketch out the land. I'm just filling it in with the Mars Black. And then you can get the sides too. Okay. Then I'm going to grab this 10-0 liner. It's a very small brush. We're going to use this to paint the trees. In fact, I'm going to do the tree trunk with this brush. So I'm going to do a vertical line. I'm going to start on the left. And the height of this is just a tiny bit higher than the sun. So almost as the same height as the sun, but just a tad bit higher. If that helps give you a little bit of a reference here. And then I'm going to paint the branches. So I always start from the top and then I work my way down because the branches are kind of forming a triangle because these are pine trees. And so they get longer as they go out. You can use a fan brush for this if you like using the fan brush for painting trees. I like using fan brushes for painting trees, but this was such a small area that the fan brush was not effective for me. So I'm using the tiny brush for this because these trees are small. And then go ahead and paint your next tree. And each of these trees, so the trees are gradually going to start getting smaller as they go towards the sun. They do kind of touch each other and overlap each other. And then, so I'm switching actually between that 10-0 and the other round brush, the 5 round brush. The 5 round brush kind of helped with the branches, while the 10-0 helped with the trunk. So if you have, if you feel more comfortable just using the little tiny brush for all the trees, that's fine. If you feel more comfortable using the round one and the tinier liner, or even a flat brush if you want to try the trees with the flat brush. It depends on what you feel more comfortable with. Again, these trees are gradually getting smaller as they go towards the sun. Not like a diagonal line they're forming. They're kind of, a few are a little bit smaller in between to make it look more natural. And then it kind of helps to do sort of like a zigzag thing when you're doing the branches. So when you start at the top and you can kind of form like a zigzag sort of motion with your hand as you go down with each of the branches. And then when I got to the sun, I did overlap the sun, but these are not very tall trees. They're very tiny, they're very far in the distance, so they kind of slightly overlap that sun. And then, of course, I used a very tiny liner for these trees. I didn't switch back to that larger round brush because these are very far in the distance. And then as you move towards the right for the trees, they get gradually larger. You can see that zigzags for the motion that I was talking about in that larger tree that I just did. And then sometimes I'd like to go back with that 10-0 liner just to kind of touch up some of the areas, some of the tops of the trees. Okay, so these birds are a very special touch to this painting. I'm using that 10-0 liner. You need that 10-0 liner for these birds. Very tiny. I'm just doing the classic little M bird thing. So they're smaller towards the bottom and they get slightly larger above the sun. And then I didn't make any higher than the treetops because all of that area above the trees are going to be the hot air balloons. And then I went back and filled in these left and right sides where there's some gaps, just with some more trees to make it look like they're extending off the canvas a bit. Okay, so these hot air balloons, I recommend drawing with chalk first. This is just regular white chalk. And there's the largest one in the upper left hand corner. And it's almost like you're drawing a heart, so you can kind of see that bottom part where it points a little bit, but it doesn't actually point to a triangle. It's a little bit flat on the bottom of that point. And then the little basket's like a semicircle. So go around like you're drawing a heart, but you're not making the bumps on the top. It's going completely around, and go down in a little tiny semicircle. And then I'm varying the sizes of these balloons. So none of them are the same size. We have kind of an asymmetrical setup here. And then of course, if you erase, just dip your finger in the water, preferably clear water. I probably should have cleared my water out there, but it erases easily with the water. And then I didn't draw any of the tiny balloons with the chalk. I didn't see that as being necessary because the chalk is kind of thick. And then you can kind of play around with the idea of balance here. I wanted there's more balloons on the left that are smaller to kind of balance out that larger one. Okay, so to paint the balloons in, I used my number 4 bright and started with this larger one. I'm using Mars Black and painting it in solid black. I liked using the flat brush for this. You can try it with a round brush, a larger round, but the flat really helped to kind of control these curves and get it all cut in and sharp looking. And then, of course, when you're ready to paint the basket in, switch to the smaller brush for that. And then when you go and paint the smaller balloons, you'll definitely need a smaller brush for that as well. So I erased some of these chalk lines as I went along. You can do that, or you can wait until everything's dry and then erase any leftover chalk lines. It's up to you. And then the little tiny rope that you might see from the basket to connecting to the balloon. So that's it, just paint in all your balloons solid black. So all the balloons that we drew with the chalk are going to be the black. After this step, we're going to do some more balloons, but those are going to be the gray balloons, the different shades of gray balloons. And those will all be painted in with that tiny 10-0 brush. Okay, so we got all of those balloons painted in, and we're going to add titanium white to the palette so that we can mix different shades of gray for all these very tiny balloons in the distance. And the reason why we're doing those gray is because things in the distance are not as dark as things that are closer, and also the sun is hitting those balloons and making them look lighter. It creates a very pretty effect to this painting. So I mixed black and white together. I can't tell you the proportions. It's just probably about 50-50 for this one. But as I go along, I'm going to add more white to different balloons or more black to different balloons. So you're going to just kind of create different shades of gray here by mixing different amounts of gray and white on your palette and painting each of these tiny balloons a different shade of gray. So if you want, you can mix the colors separately on, if you're using one of these circle palettes or your paper plate, you can mix them separately. But I like to just kind of add more white or more black to the color that's already there as I go along. So it's up to you how you would like to do that. And then of course I'm using the 10-0 brush to paint those tiny balloons. And freehanding them in. They're so tiny. I didn't pre-draw those in. And then you could see kind of the illusion it's creating with the gray balloons here. I'm just going in and kind of touching up some of these balloons here. And then any white chalk that's still showing through, you can get a wet brush and erase the chalk lines. Again, preferably clear water. I was brave and I did it with all that black water. And then the next step after this is optional, but I'm going to add just a little bit of highlight with titanium white to some of these balloons. So with that 10-0 liner, I'm just going to add just a few areas, especially on the larger balloons. So right on the bottom here, and then on the bottom of the basket, and then a little bit on the bottom of the balloon, and same with the other balloons. So you just have a little bit of white hitting that shadow, again completely optional. This painting has come to its conclusion. I hope that you enjoyed this painting balloon silhouette tutorial. I sure enjoyed it. It's a very simple design, very pretty with that bright sun. I think my favorite part was stamping that sun. Thanks for watching. Go to www.stepbysteppainting.net for all pictures, more videos, and lots of goodies. Thank you.